Most people assume they have a pretty good understanding of what's legal and what isn't. Then there are these activities, which sound so obviously illegal that most people would never attempt them, despite being perfectly within their legal rights. These shocking legal loopholes prove that the law is way weirder than common sense would suggest. 1. Recording people in public without permission. In most states, you can legally record anyone in public spaces without their knowledge or consent, including their conversations, as long as you're also in a public area. This sounds like stalking or invasion of privacy, but legally, people have no expectation of privacy in public spaces, meaning you can film strangers, record their conversations with others, and even follow them around with a camera, as long as you stay on public property. The key legal principle is that anything you can see or hear from a public space is fair game for recording, which is why paparazzi, citizen journalists, and random people with smartphones can legally document public activities without asking permission first. 2. Starting a religion for tax benefits. You can legally establish your own religion, appoint yourself as the leader, and claim tax-exempt status as long as you meet basic organizational requirements and maintain the appearance of genuine religious activity. This sounds like fraud, but the IRS grants religious tax exemptions based on organizational structure rather than theological legitimacy, meaning you can create religions with unusual beliefs, minimal followers, or practices that seem designed primarily for tax avoidance. The legal system protects religious freedom so strongly that authorities rarely investigate whether religions are real, as long as they follow proper procedures and maintain consistent religious activities. 3. Refusing to help someone in an emergency. In most states, you have no legal obligation to rescue someone in danger, call for help, or provide assistance during emergencies, even if you could easily save someone's life without risk to yourself. This sounds like criminal negligence, but Good Samaritan laws generally protect people who help, rather than requiring them to help, meaning you can legally watch someone drown, ignore heart attack victims, or walk past car accident scenes without legal consequences. Only certain professionals like lifeguards or medical personnel have legal duties to provide emergency assistance, while ordinary citizens can legally choose not to get involved in any emergency situation. 4. Taking photos through people's windows. You can legally photograph anything visible from public property, including the interior of people's homes through their windows, as long as you're standing on public sidewalks, streets, or other publicly accessible areas. This sounds like peeping or stalking, but privacy laws only protect what people take reasonable steps to hide, meaning open windows, visible activities, and anything observable from public spaces can be legally photographed or filmed. Property owners can prevent this by closing curtains or installing privacy screens, but they have no legal recourse against photographers who capture visible activities from public locations. 5. Collecting and selling public information. You can legally gather personal information about people from public records, social media, and other accessible sources, then compile and sell this information to businesses, investigators, or anyone willing to pay for it. This sounds like identity theft or stalking, but most personal information is considered public once it's shared in accessible venues, meaning you can legally collect names, addresses, phone numbers, employment information, and social media content to create detailed personal profiles for commercial purposes. Data brokers use these legal methods to build comprehensive databases about individuals without their knowledge or consent. 6. Following people in public. You can legally follow someone around in public spaces as long as you don't threaten them, enter private property, or engage in behavior that meets specific legal definitions of stalking or harassment. This sounds like stalking, but legal stalking requires patterns of threatening behavior or credible fears of harm, meaning you can legally walk behind someone, sit near them in public places, or show up at locations they frequent as long as you maintain appropriate distances and avoid explicit threats. Private investigators and process servers use these legal rights routinely to monitor people for legitimate business purposes. 7. Recording phone calls. Without permission. In one-party consent states, you can legally record phone conversations as long as you're participating in the call, meaning you can record any conversation you're part of without telling the other person. This sounds like wiretapping, which is a serious federal crime. But one-party consent laws allow call recording when at least one participant, you, agrees to the recording. This means you can legally record business calls, personal conversations, or even confrontational discussions without the other person's knowledge, as long as you're actually part of the conversation being recorded. 8. Lying to most people. You can legally lie to almost anyone except law enforcement officers, court officials, or in situations involving contracts, fraud, or specific professional obligations. This sounds like it should be illegal, but truthfulness is only legally required in specific circumstances, meaning you can legally lie to friends, family, employers, in most contexts, strangers, or businesses about almost anything without legal consequences. The legal system generally treats lying as morally wrong but not criminal, unless it involves specific scenarios like perjury, fraud, or interfering with legal proceedings. 9. Buying and selling used underwear. You can legally purchase and sell used undergarments through online platforms, classified ads, or other commercial venues, as long as transactions don't involve minors or violate platform-specific terms of service. This sounds like it should be regulated or prohibited for health reasons, but used clothing sales are generally unrestricted, and underwear falls into the same legal category as other used garments. Online marketplaces have made this business more visible and accessible, but the legal principles governing used clothing sales apply equally to undergarments and other personal items. 10. Impersonating most professions. You can legally claim to be many professionals as long as you don't actually practice regulated professions or use protected titles without proper licensing. This sounds like professional impersonation, which can be illegal, but many job titles and professional descriptions aren't legally protected, meaning you can legally claim to be a consultant, advisor, expert, or specialist in various fields without credentials. Legal problems only arise when you practice licensed professions like medicine or law, or when impersonation involves fraud or deception for illegal purposes. 11. Owning military-style equipment. You can legally purchase and own military surplus equipment, including uniforms, vehicles, communication devices, and non-weapon gear through government auctions and military surplus dealers. This sounds like it should be restricted for national security reasons, but most military equipment becomes legal for civilian ownership once it's declared surplus and non-sensitive. Collectors and enthusiasts legally own everything from military vehicles to communication equipment, as long as weapons systems and classified technology are properly removed or deactivated. 12. Creating fake businesses. You can legally register business names, create official-looking websites, and establish business entities that don't actually conduct legitimate business operations as long as you're not committing fraud or violating specific regulations. This sounds like business fraud, but business registration is generally accessible and minimally regulated, meaning you can legally create businesses for tax purposes, privacy protection, or other legitimate reasons even if they don't actively generate revenue or provide services. Problems only arise when fake businesses are used for fraudulent purposes or to violate specific business regulations. 13. Buying property. Next to people you dislike, you can legally research property ownership, identify homes belonging to specific individuals, and purchase adjacent or nearby properties specifically to be close to people you want to monitor, annoy, or influence. This sounds like harassment or stalking, but property rights are generally unrestricted regarding buyer motivation, meaning you can legally buy property for personal, emotional, or strategic reasons as long as you meet financial requirements and don't violate property use restrictions. Homeowner associations and zoning laws may limit what you can do with property, but they rarely restrict who can buy it. 14. Collecting debt in aggressive ways. You can legally contact debtors frequently, demand payment, and use emotionally manipulative techniques as long as you don't violate specific debt collection laws regarding threats, harassment, or false representation. This sounds like extortion, but debt collection operates under different legal standards that allow persistent and aggressive contact methods that would be considered harassment in other contexts. Debt collectors can legally call repeatedly, contact employers and family members, and use psychological pressure techniques as long as they follow federal debt collection guidelines. 15. Starting cults. You can legally establish groups with unusual beliefs, charismatic leadership structures, and practices that isolate members from outside influences, as long as you don't engage in specific illegal activities like fraud, abuse, or coercion. This sounds like it should be regulated for public safety, but religious freedom protections are so broad that even groups commonly called cults operate legally as long as they avoid criminal activity. Legal authorities distinguish between unusual religious practices and actual crimes, meaning many concerning group dynamics remain legal. 16. Selling expired food. In many jurisdictions, you can legally sell food past its expiration date as long as you're not making specific health claims or violating local health regulations that require expiration date compliance. This sounds like it should be a health violation, but best by and sell by dates are often manufacturer suggestions rather than legal requirements, meaning businesses can legally sell expired products if local laws don't specifically prohibit it. Consumer protection laws vary significantly regarding expired food sales. 17. Copying most creative work. You can legally copy, reproduce, and distribute most creative works that are in the public domain or fall under fair use exceptions, including using substantial portions of copyrighted material for criticism, education, or parody purposes. This sounds like copyright violation, but intellectual property law includes significant exceptions that allow legal copying under specific circumstances. Fair use provisions, public domain works, and educational exceptions create broad opportunities for legal copying that would otherwise seem like obvious copyright infringement. 18. Discriminating in personal relationships. You can legally refuse to associate with, befriend, date, or maintain relationships with people based on almost any personal characteristic, including race, religion, political beliefs, or other factors that would be illegal in employment or housing contexts. This sounds like it should be covered by anti-discrimination laws, but personal relationship choices are generally protected as individual freedom, meaning you can legally choose friends, romantic partners, or social associates using criteria that would be illegal in business contexts. 19. Charging extreme prices. You can legally charge whatever prices you want for most goods and services, including extremely high prices that take advantage of desperate situations, limited supply, or customer ignorance about market rates. This sounds like price gouging, which is sometimes illegal during emergencies, but general pricing is usually unrestricted by law, meaning you can legally charge whatever people are willing to pay. Price regulation exists mainly for utilities and emergency situations, leaving most commerce open to any pricing strategy. 20. Publishing private information. You can legally publish personal information about public figures or private information about anyone if it's already publicly available or obtained through legal means, even if publication causes embarrassment, relationship problems, or professional damage. This sounds like invasion of privacy, but privacy laws mainly protect information that people take reasonable steps to keep private, meaning you can legally publish information obtained from public records, social media, or other accessible sources. Public figures have even less privacy protection under legal standards. 21. Creating noise. During legal hours, you can legally generate loud noise, play music, or conduct noisy activities during daytime hours, even if it annoys neighbors, as long as you comply with local noise ordinances that typically allow significant noise during business hours. This sounds like it should be noise pollution or disturbing the peace, but noise regulations usually focus on nighttime quiet hours, meaning daytime noise is generally legal regardless of how annoying it is to others. Construction, lawn care, and other loud activities operate legally during permitted hours. 22. Refusing service for most reasons. You can legally refuse to serve customers in your business for almost any reason except specific protected characteristics like race or disability, meaning you can legally deny service based on personal dislike, appearance, behavior, or other factors. This sounds like discrimination, but business owners have broad rights to choose their customers as long as they don't violate specific anti-discrimination laws. Most personal characteristics and behaviors aren't legally protected, leaving businesses free to refuse service for various reasons. 23. Lying in job interviews. You can legally lie about most aspects of your background during job interviews as long as you don't lie about credentials, licenses, or qualifications that affect job performance or safety. This sounds like fraud, but employment law generally treats hiring as a negotiation, where both parties can present themselves favorably, meaning you can legally exaggerate experience, hide unfavorable information, or misrepresent personal details that don't directly affect job qualifications. Problems arise mainly when lies affect actual job performance or safety. 24. Abandoning property. You can legally abandon personal property by leaving it in public spaces or on other people's property, effectively transferring ownership to whoever finds it or the property owner where it's left. This sounds like littering or dumping, but property abandonment is a recognized legal concept that transfers ownership through intentional relinquishment, meaning you can legally get rid of unwanted items by abandoning them in appropriate locations. Local laws may regulate where abandonment is permitted, but the principle remains legal. 25. Creating fake online personas. You can legally create false identities on social media and other online platforms as long as you don't use these personas for fraud, impersonation of specific real people, or other illegal activities. This sounds like identity fraud, but online identity creation is generally unrestricted, meaning you can legally maintain multiple fake profiles with false names, photos, and personal information for privacy, entertainment, or other legitimate purposes. Problems arise only when fake personas are used for specific illegal activities like fraud or harassment. 26. Buying and selling. Personal data. You can legally purchase personal information about individuals from data brokers and then resell this information to other businesses or individuals, creating a legal market for personal data that most people don't realize exists. This sounds like identity theft, but most personal information becomes a commodity once it's collected legally, meaning you can legally buy and sell details about people's lives, habits, and personal information without their knowledge or consent. Data privacy laws are still catching up to these commercial practices. 27. Evicting tenants for legal reasons. You can legally evict tenants for various reasons, including personal dislike, wanting to use the property differently, or simply preferring different tenants, as long as you follow proper legal procedures and don't violate specific tenant protection laws. This sounds like it should require serious cause, but landlord-tenant law often favors property owners, meaning you can legally remove tenants for reasons that seem arbitrary or unfair as long as you follow proper legal procedures and notice requirements. 28. Psychological manipulation. You can legally use psychological techniques to influence people's decisions, emotions, and behaviors in personal and business contexts as long as you don't cross specific legal lines involving coercion, fraud, or harassment. This sounds like it should be regulated, but psychological influence is generally legal and widely used in marketing, sales, and interpersonal relationships, meaning you can legally manipulate people using techniques borrowed from psychology and marketing as long as they don't involve specific illegal practices. 29. Hoarding resources. You can legally purchase and stockpile large quantities of goods, even essential items during shortages, for personal use or resale at higher prices unless specific emergency regulations prohibit hoarding. This sounds like it should be regulated during crises, but property rights generally protect your ability to buy and store whatever you can afford, meaning you can legally create shortages for others by purchasing available supplies. Emergency powers sometimes restrict hoarding, but normal commerce allows resource accumulation. 30. Surveillance of public spaces. You can legally install cameras that monitor public areas adjacent to your property, including sidewalks, streets, and neighboring properties visible from public spaces, as long as cameras don't look into private areas where people have reasonable privacy expectations. This sounds like spying or stalking, but surveillance rights extend to anything visible from public locations, meaning you can legally monitor and record public activities near your property. Privacy laws protect private spaces but not public activities. 31. Emotional abuse. You can legally engage in many psychologically harmful behaviors toward adults, including manipulation, gaslighting, isolation, and emotional cruelty, as long as you don't make specific threats or engage in behavior that meets legal definitions of harassment or stalking. This sounds like it should be illegal, but emotional abuse among adults is largely unregulated by criminal law, which focuses on physical harm and specific threatening behaviors. Civil law provides some remedies, but Many emotionally harmful behaviors remain legal. 32. Price discrimination. You can legally charge different prices to different customers for the same goods or services based on their ability to pay, negotiation skills, or personal characteristics that aren't specifically protected by law. This sounds like unfair business practices, but price discrimination is generally legal and widely practiced, meaning businesses can legally offer different deals to different customers based on various factors. Anti-discrimination laws only restrict pricing differences based on specific protected characteristics. 33. Information warfare. You can legally spread false or misleading information about political candidates, social issues, or current events through social media and other platforms, as long as you don't violate specific laws about defamation, election interference, or fraud. This sounds like it should be regulated as propaganda or misinformation, but free speech protections are broad enough to cover most false information sharing, meaning you can legally participate in information campaigns that mislead people about important topics. 34. Predatory lending. You can legally offer loans with extremely high interest rates, confusing terms, and conditions that take advantage of borrowers' financial desperation or lack of sophistication, as long as you comply with applicable lending regulations that vary by state and loan type. This sounds like financial exploitation, but lending law often allows practices that seem predatory, meaning you can legally profit from people's financial difficulties using loan terms that cause significant long-term financial harm. 35. Cultural appropriation. You can legally adopt, use, and profit from cultural practices, symbols, and traditions from cultures other than your own, even in ways that members of those cultures find offensive or exploitative. This sounds like it should be regulated as cultural theft, but intellectual property and cultural protection laws are limited, meaning you can legally use cultural elements in business, fashion, or personal expression regardless of cultural significance or community objections. 36. Workplace psychological pressure. You can legally create stressful work environments, use psychological pressure to motivate employees, and implement management practices that cause significant mental distress, as long as you don't violate specific labor laws or create legally hostile work environments. This sounds like workplace abuse, but employment law provides limited protection against psychological pressure techniques that are widely used in business management, meaning many harmful workplace practices remain legal. 37. Gerrymandering. You can legally manipulate electoral districts to favor specific political outcomes by drawing district boundaries that concentrate or disperse voting populations in ways that affect election results. This sounds like election fraud, but redistricting is generally controlled by partisan political processes rather than neutral standards, meaning you can legally design electoral districts to achieve specific political advantages as long as you don't violate specific constitutional requirements about population equality and minority representation. 38. Academic plagiarism in non-academic contexts. You can legally copy and use other people's ideas, research, and creative work in business and personal contexts as long as you don't violate copyright laws or specific professional standards that require attribution. This sounds like intellectual theft, but plagiarism is mainly regulated in academic and professional contexts, meaning you can legally use other people's ideas and work in many situations without giving credit or compensation. 39. Manipulative marketing. You can legally use psychological techniques, emotional manipulation, and misleading but not false advertising to influence consumer behavior and increase sales, as long as you don't make specific false claims or violate consumer protection regulations. This sounds like fraud, but marketing law allows significant manipulation and influence techniques, meaning you can legally use psychology to manipulate consumer decisions in ways that may not serve their best interests. 40. Environmental damage on your property. You can legally destroy natural habitats, remove native vegetation, and alter ecosystems on your own property, as long as you don't violate specific environmental regulations that vary by location and property type. This sounds like it should be regulated for environmental protection, but property rights often supersede environmental concerns, meaning you can legally cause significant ecological damage on your own land unless specific laws protect particular species or habitats. 41. Social exclusion. You can legally organize groups, communities, or social activities that systematically exclude people based on characteristics that aren't specifically protected by law, creating social segregation and discrimination in personal contexts. This sounds like it should be covered by anti-discrimination laws, but social organization is generally protected as freedom of association, meaning you can legally create exclusive social groups that discriminate against various types of people. 42. Financial speculation. You can legally engage in financial activities that destabilize markets, harm other investors, or create economic problems as long as you don't engage in specific illegal practices like insider trading or market manipulation. This sounds like it should be regulated for economic stability, but most speculative trading is legal regardless of its effects on markets or other people, meaning you can legally pursue profits through financial strategies that cause broader economic harm. 43. Psychological experiments. You can legally conduct informal psychological experiments on friends, family, customers, or other people in your life as long as you don't cause specific harm or violate professional ethical standards that apply mainly to formal research. This sounds like it should require consent and oversight, but informal psychological influence and experimentation is largely unregulated, meaning you can legally test psychological techniques on people without their knowledge or consent. 44. Resource monopolization. You can legally attempt to control access to resources, information, or opportunities in ways that harm competitors or community members as long as you don't violate specific antitrust or monopoly laws that have high legal thresholds. This sounds like it should be regulated as unfair competition, but competitive practices are generally legal unless they reach specific legal standards for monopolistic behavior, meaning you can legally harm others' economic opportunities through resource control. 45. And finally, legal system manipulation. You can legally use the legal system to harass others through frivolous lawsuits, strategic legal actions, and procedural manipulation that cost targets significant time and money, even when your legal claims lack merit. This sounds like abuse of the legal system, but access to courts is generally protected, even when legal actions seem motivated by harassment rather than legitimate disputes, meaning you can legally use lawsuits and legal procedures to cause problems for people you dislike as long as your actions aren't specifically classified as vexatious litigation, which has high legal standards for restriction. Here's the shocking truth. Our legal system has massive gaps between what seems obviously wrong and what's actually illegal, creating opportunities for behavior that most people would never attempt because it sounds so clearly illegal. These legal loopholes exist because laws can't cover every possible situation, and many activities that seem harmful or wrong don't meet specific legal standards for criminal or civil liability. The real lesson isn't that you should do these things just because they're legal, and it's that legal and right are often completely different concepts, and the law is much weirder than most people realize. Subscribe for more evidence that the legal system is way stranger than common sense would suggest.